And we are live. This is episode 38 of Zeta Mining, and today our topic is Ebola for you and me. Seriously, we want to be a little practical about Ebola, and Warren and I are here today to talk a little bit about some of the trends happening in the conversation about Ebola online. We have a lot of people that are fear-mongering and yelling and screaming that the sky is falling, Ebola is coming, and we're all going to die of the zombie apocalypse. And on the other side, we've got a lot of people that are kind of the anti-fear wave of things, manning up, showing a lot of bravado, claiming to eat Ebola for breakfast, nothing to see, nothing to worry about here. And there seems to be a practical approach somewhere in the middle of all of that as we've kind of going through this awareness of Ebola. So we wanted to kind of talk about the conversations, some of the things that are out there, and look at this from a practical, hey, let's figure it out, let's plan, act on it, but not go crazy in either direction. So I'm here with my co-host, Warren Whitlock. How are you doing, Warren?
Hello. I think we got to set ground rules when we're talking about a subject like this. Is that it can't be our purpose and the way we discuss things. First of all, we're not experts. We don't know. We haven't studied the disease, or we're not doctors or anything like that, and so we don't intend to give anybody any kind of advice. But because it's such a big meme, because there's so much going on, and because I think the other given is there are people dying from Ebola. Didn't mean to laugh there. It's not a real thing. It is a real thing, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it is a real thing that there really are people who are getting a disease and dying in Africa, and very serious on that note. At the same time, the meme is what we're talking about, which is like a different thing, and we're not. And even my normal reaction is to joke about the overreaction to things and the irrationality. But I think it's something like I guess best sum it up is after publicly stating many times that the case in Dallas had been blown out of proportion for people thinking that, it's come to the United States, it's got to grow, we've got one zombie, we're going to get more. That might be a better way to talk about it. Call this the zombie apocalypse, and then we know that it's fiction, or isn't.
Well, not to get too crazy, but there are a couple reports of people coming back from the dead in Africa, although
right.
those are mostly people that were diagnosed as being dead, and then they woke up and
right.
and stuff like that.
So,
there is some craziness out there to back up.
I think I go with my personal story is that after having just very clearly said that I was not afraid of getting Ebola, and the practical things and the reasons I'm not afraid. I'd be afraid if I was unprotected, wandering around, Liberia, talking to people and eating the local food and practicing the local customs. I would be very much afraid that I was I was doing something that could be at risk. It's still not going to hit everybody. It's there's still, but it's more odds. It's like if I jump out of a plane and have a parachute and I'm properly trained, I'm still got a little bit of fear. And then I was saying you shouldn't in the U.S. So in that context, I went to an event here in Las Vegas and met somebody. They shook my hand, and I said, "Where are you from?" And they said, "Dallas." And, by the time I'd taken a step back, I was making jokes and saying, I was doing the old put up my fingers in a cross and say, "Stay away from me," and, joking about it. But I have to admit, while I was doing that, that was started by a fear that came to me as soon as I realized I had just shaken hands with somebody from Dallas.
Our brains are they're built, designed, created, however you want to put it, but our brains are built in a way where we make intuitive leaps. It's a survival mechanism. We have to make intuitive leaps, and So it's perfectly natural to make those intuitive leaps, like, oh, I might need to be a little extra cautious, and that's
Right.
kind of part of the genesis of this show, talking about how to rein that in and also avoid the fear, having a plan in place and
Right.
making sure everything's running.
Right. So we're not going to give you advice on how to, what to do to prepare for the eventual attack of Ebola, or why not to do any of that, or anything like that. What we want to talk about is what to do when you see a meme pop up like this, and how to go about getting the facts and feeling confident that you're getting the facts. Because I know I've been picking apart memes on Twitter on a regular basis now for years, and I consider myself a fairly educated, informed person, and I've seen the reactions I get from people, and you can tell in one tweet what somebody's bias is towards the subject, and I have to remember I have biases, and so and I engage in those conversations on purpose to learn from people, but the truth is, those conversations have nothing to do with solving the crisis or helping the sick or anything like that. It's about the meme. So it might as well be a bendable iPhone as be Ebola, as far as that's concerned. And now that we've stated it's a real thing that we are concerned about, let's go ahead and talk about the meme.
Right. So many folks, like you said, when you're in social media, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you might be, you're having conversations with people. Sometimes people sometimes people you don't know. And one of the things that everybody dislikes is when you step into that conversation, you say something that sets someone off, and before you know it, you're in a back and forth argument over someone or with someone over something that you may or may not really even care about. You just happen to get dragged into this conversation because you stepped in it wrong. And so part of what we're talking about here is with the meme, I would say meme wrong. With the meme is that there's seems to be two polarized sides at the moment. That could change, that could shift. Just like in politics, there's a left or a right. In this case, there's kind of a scared and fearful, and an anti-scared and anti-fearful set. So as you see these conversations, look for the tones there and see where people are a little bit before you make your comments and before you jump into that conversation. But going from a practical perspective, both sides can cause a little bit of harm here because it is a real event. There are real things happening, and we do need to take, as a society, real and actual practical precautions to deal with this and nip it in the bud while it's still relatively contained in a couple smaller countries in Africa. So we don't necessarily want right. We don't necessarily want the anti-fear crowd or the fearful crowd, either one of them, to hold a whole lot of sway. They're not the practical middle. They're not most of us, going about our lives in the middle, not going nuts over this one way or another. We need to, and this is a conversation we could probably have about just about any topic in America. We need the relatively silent, normal majority to stand up and drive things forward and take charge a little bit and not allow the fringes to guide where we're going quite as much as what's kind of happening.
Well, and to that, I attend a lot of events, living in Las Vegas and going to these events, and PubCon's one of the big ones. That happened last week, and most people where I had a conversation like we're having here are fairly reasonable about the thing. The idea that, we need to shoot everybody with Ebola and get rid of them now, doesn't come up. And on the other hand, I will drink the Ebola virus doesn't come up either. Actually, I don't think I've seen anybody say that other than you alluded to it a minute ago. But everybody seems to be fairly normal in doing it. When you take a look at the hashtag search on Twitter for the real-time talking about it, I've seen it go up and down different parts of the day, times of the week. A weekend evening when it's actually not a trending topic. It's been mostly a trending top 10 topic on Twitter all of the last couple of weeks. But on Sunday it died down, And what I noticed was then you really stand out that it was just fringe doing it. The new reports, some news came out on Sunday morning, but by Sunday evening, really not much of anything going on. And you see kids using it in, in just silly ways, and people that speak in completely incomplete sentences, they make no sense. They put up a picture of somebody and say, oh, Ebola, you. I don't know what that means, but I told my sis, Ebola, okay, and when you get out to that, you notice that it's a word that's got popular and being used, and we've got to cut off that. And more importantly, you got to, cut off some of the other things. As soon as you see somebody, put Obama, I saw one last night, the Obama logo from the last election, redone with the word Ebola instead of Obama, which kind of, tickled my funny bone a bit that, somebody had cleverly saw how the words looked the same size and done something. And I actually looked for a link or even just the comment in the tweet that would say anything about it, because you would think, my reaction was, well, that's a really weird conservative ploy to go out and put, that Ebola is the cause of this. And they used something about whatever his slogan was. And really what it was somebody thought the word looked good and did it. There might have been more to it someplace.
Both sides.
Right. I never found it anywhere else on the net. Just the photo had been retweeted by somebody, with a nonsensical comment. Well, I discount that, At the same time, though, even using that this is the current administration's fault is getting off of the topic of what to do about a crisis that's in Africa. It's not here. And so, is there things that the Obama administration could do better or worse? Sure. We could have a political discussion on that, fine. Another one is there was a chart about how many people die from various diseases or various causes of death, and showing that, we are...
that one stands out for me. It was kind of like a cartoon picture, and it showed the hundreds or millions of people that are dying from various different things, from drinking too much to heart disease and obesity and diabetes, and saying, how comparing that to the numbers of people dying from Ebola. Right. And there's two fallacies in that satire. One, from a satire perspective, yeah, it's kind of funny, and I enjoy satire, and I personally, you and I disagree on the value of satire sometimes a little bit. We both enjoy the jokes, but I see value in satire.
Actually, that's the first one I saw on that was a bar chart that showed some of these things, and I said, to me, it was showing the good in it was that it was showing that the chances of a U.S. citizen dying from, again, U.S. residents, not worldwide, because the crisis is real over in Africa. But the chart was showing that if you're going to worry about something else. And it's a big list, and what the source was or how they did it, they might have had an axe to grind. Then came up the cartoons where, an obese person worried about Ebola. Why don't you worry about your obesity? And the person was smoking, and they put some of those.
Right, smoking was in there,
and then what I was bringing up
compared to a disease, I guess, was one. Right. There's one of the fallacies is that several different vices kind of came in, and the deaths related to those vices were then compared to Ebola, where it's not a vice, and you don't necessarily have anything that you can do to control it. But the other fallacy is that these are things that have ramped up over time, and today have a death rate that is what it is, that's been built up over time, whereas Ebola is relatively new, first discovered in the 70s, and it's been running its course, and today, it's now at a pace where it's killing 4,000 people a year with this current outbreak.
Right. Let's not get into
things. AIDS started in the 20s.
Discussion of Ebola again, but really, the whole thing I'm trying to bring up, and I'm triggering things with you, and it triggers things with me too. We can't help that. Is that I had people, it went from facts. The first one I saw did not focus on things we can control. Then I saw one where it was talking about things we can control. Good message. There are things you can control to be safer. And by the way, if you build up your immune system by being healthy, you're going to do a better job if for some reason you do come in contact with Ebola. So it's still a little bit practical. And then the ones that were just saying, all the things you can control, the vices, if you will. And then finally, twice yesterday, I got told that I should be saying more about abortion because it was left off the charts.
And then everybody's got their particular acts that they want ground.
I'm happy with saying that, on the message, they agree with them, okay? But that wasn't the point. The point is that doesn't have anything to do with Ebola. Now we've left vices and choices and everything like that. And first of all, it was mere facts, and then it was like, what can we pick out that we can do something about and put forth a message, to finally, we're just going to attack whatever we can. And then, coincidentally, about that time is when I see the thing that's got Ebola written out like Obama's name. We've like completely lost any reference to facts. So when you see that kind of loss of objectivity, it's the same problem we're having even in talking about it. We've got lots of baggage of our other discussions, the way we feel, what we know about, and, hey, can I take a jab at Brett while I'm saying this? And, and all the fun in that kind of conversation. And the facts are that there are more, the pure fact in it was that Ebola deaths are extremely rare and probably staying that way in the U.S. I'll give you another example. I've been posting something that says that if you've not been in contact with somebody that has Ebola in the same room and touched their bodily fluids, you don't need to be worried about whether or not you have Ebola. And somebody will come back and say, what about a sneeze? Is a sneeze airborne or not? And actually, there's a valid question in there. If
you're getting fluids from a sneeze, then you're in trouble.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about them staying in the air for a long time.
Exactly. And so they're trying to explain that, and they'll do everything from if you're in a plane and what happens to the sneeze.
If you're in an international plane, we all know, just being practical for a second, we all know that planes and the seats that you have to sit in a plane are pretty much cesspools for all sorts of stuff. You're probably more likely to get MRSA than you are Ebola.
Right.
That's because planes are pretty dirty in general. So, being practical in a time where, there's several different other viruses floating around that in the U.S. in particular are probably more troubling than Ebola right now. So it's probably a good time to be a little practical. Maybe you don't wear shorts on a plane or a short skirt or something like that. Maybe you don't touch very much if you can avoid it. Maybe you wipe stuff down. Maybe you take wipes if you're really out there. Maybe you carry,
which probably it would be. It would have been good advice 6 months ago.
Right. But that's good advice for a plane in general because planes are never clean, but we don't always think about it. We joke about it's not that clean, but...
Again, we're off on talking about planes.
Well, no, it's all about practicality, right? So
right. I'm trying to stick to
all these fears pop up, but we can't dismiss the things that we can be practical about.
Exactly.
So that things don't get worse, and then then the arguments get twisted and out of control.
I like where you're coming from on this because and the whole idea is somebody posted last week. I said that their reaction to it, since they knew that this was planned on being a way to cut down a major part of the population, and was going to be here any time, and it did have something to do with the border, our southern border, and what's going on with that.
There's people saying that we should lock down our borders because of Ebola. Kanye West, he comes up in our show a little too often, I think, but he's already on record saying that he thinks there might be a population control thing going on with Ebola.
You know what? And we're not here to say that there isn't. We wouldn't know if there was, if there is some vast evil conspiracy involved. I'm a Occam's razor kind of person on that, and say that usually I can count on the the people needed to carry that out. If you get past about 2, you pretty much count on somebody screwing something up or telling about it. So that kind of kills all conspiracy theories to me. But it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there trying to do evil. But for whatever, this one man's reaction, and Kanye isn't doing anything about it. He's appearing in public and saying stupid things. That's what, that's his brand. That's what he does.
Right.
But this guy was stating something about how he was going to stay away from the cities. Well, okay, I guess if you live on a compound, you can do that. And he says, well, as a matter of fact, we have. The guy is on a ranch in Texas and has decided the best thing for him to do is, stop going outside the ranch and stay there until this thing blows over. Is that practical? Not for most of us. It might be for him. And I can't tell him not to do that. At the same time, I think he's nuts, but I can't tell him not to do that.
Well, let's talk about it for a short amount of time in zombie terms. What always happens during the zombie apocalypse? Eventually, the zombies swarm, and there's so many of them that you're going to lose some people that you love. And at the end of the day, you might be on your compound or ranch, but somebody in your family is going to get bit defending the ranch.
Right.
You can't isolate yourself that much, unfortunately. And so isolation isn't practical. And that's probably obvious to everybody. Locking up in a compound isn't ever going to be perceived as practical. It might be something that you do, and it could be an extra safe thing, but practical is shutting the virus down as much as possible, as soon as possible, before it grows to the point where you can't control it, before it gets past a critical mass.
And it goes back to my advice on, my current advice on social media and, business, marketing, everything is you go where the customer is, you take care of what is needed. In this case, the correct reaction in all that time that we were, I'm going to say as a society, ignoring it, because the stats show, I checked Google Trends last week, searches for Ebola skyrocketed when the Dallas thing was announced. So, it became something that people got scared about, decided to check out, and did that. And if you think about it, if you're running an election, people who love to follow politics for any excuse are always going to be looking for things. And then at some point, everybody's searching for the candidate's name and trying to figure out how they're going to vote. Even though they've been exposed to it, they're doing their best to ignore it up until the last minute. That's the effect that happened. Some people would say then that, that proves that, there's something wrong with American society, that we need to have a case here before we care. No, it's not really saying anything. It's just human nature, the way things happen. But, the best thing for us to possibly do would have been to send, the armies of health workers, when it was 100 cases, and contained it and got rid of it, and that makes a lot more sense. That's the theme of the Outbreak movie rather than the zombie apocalypse.
And I think, some people who've seen Outbreak, way back in the 90s, they think that the response was going to be like the movie. And the response hasn't been anything like the movie. And so one of the problems with, one of the things driving the memes out there is that the response isn't like the movie at all. And so people are seeing the response that doesn't match what they were taught by Hollywood, which may or may not be founded in reality, and they're saying, oh, our government's screwing up, or our officials, our local officials, or our hospital, or there's mistakes being made.
Right.
And that increases the confusion. There's some good things that can happen at a local government level. China announced that they've got a vaccine for Ebola today. On the flip side, people going through Heathrow are upset because they just started screening there, and apparently the screening is completely voluntary. And so they're upset because what's the point of having screening if it's going to be voluntary? You might as well, you're back to ground zero doing nothing.
And you're
there's different ways that people can get out there and get on top of this thing and avoid the meltdown in discussions online and stuff like that follows.
Right. And I guess, again, our advice here, which I think we agree on this and other topics, is while these things are things that you probably gain from being aware enough that you could have a discussion on it and paying attention to it. And then there's the safety, sure, if there's something out there, and if you're, if you're getting worried about Ebola, then doing a search and find out something about it. And it makes sense that those go up when there's a case in Dallas rather than Africa. And okay, great, and you check it out and you get on with your life. And then having some kind of an opinion, and that's fine too. Or deciding you're going to stay on your compound. Whatever it is, when you start talking about it, you just keep in mind that what you're going to see, especially in today with news traveling so fast and social media, is that you're going to see some people that try to fix everything else. We had a discussion yesterday, and we got into, whether or not there would be a different way to handle quarantines and what to do. And I love those discussions with you, because we get into all sorts of things where, we could control vast populations and have no budget and come up with ideas of things. And at the end of the day, we can't through a discussion fix that, but it's intellectually stimulating, and we learn from the process, which then I can take back, and maybe I make a decision in my business a little bit differently. Maybe I have a different outlook on life because of it, that it does affect things on a grander scale. But, when I argue with the guy on a compound, I'm not going to change his mind.
We do have impact in social media, though. For example, there's a good article. It's in the New York Times from a couple days ago. An oncologist talks about an alternate way to run a quarantine.
Right.
Because quarantines are, it's 15th, 14th century technology, essentially. A plan to deal with quarantines. When the ship comes into the harbor, if somebody's sick and has the pox on the ship, you burn the whole ship. Right. And then you take the people off the ship and you lock them up for however long. If they survive, great, they get to stay. If they don't survive, well, they're dead, and that's that. Right. But it's it's something that evolved over dealing with plagues and pox and stuff like that for hundreds of years. Hasn't advanced a whole lot since then, even though we have better technology to deal with such things today. And the oncologist, a cancer doctor, a blood cancer doctor, has the experience of doing blood tests on a regular basis, reviewing people's, and I'm not a doctor, so I can't give it the proper means. It's the article's called "How to Quarantine Against Ebola." It should read, the title should be something like "A Possible Alternative to How to Quarantine Against Ebola." But he suggests that when...
But more people will read it if you put it in definite terms, yeah.
I'll add the, see if we can show that.
There you are. It's real.
It's real.
It must be true. It's in the New York Times.
And this is an opinion piece. This is a doctor providing his educated opinion on what could be done. But he's saying if there's going to be transatlantic flights, we should test their blood before they leave, because essentially the flight itself is a long period of time, and it takes about as long to get across the Atlantic as it does to finish the blood test. So we take their blood, start the test before the flight leaves, and by the time they land, the blood test results will be back, and we'll know if they have Ebola or not.
Sure.
And then you can act on it before they've left the plane. Everybody on the plane's already there. You know who's been exposed, and it's a different way to
agree with you that that's that was a thoughtful piece. I'm glad that's in there. I'm glad the doctor took the time to write that, and even though it's opinion, not fact, but it's a learned opinion. I think where you draw the line is when you and I got talking about all the other things that we might be able to do. Some crazy, some ideas. We were brainstorming basically. Then trying to turn that into advocating that that's what we should do. That's where you get into trouble. In other words,
that's where Twitter and Facebook can get us into trouble. So let's compare, Ebola, and I don't think it's going to go there yet. Right. But we've seen how Twitter works with news. The Arab Spring, news rises up, it gets reported on Twitter, people pass it around, the ideas grow. Before you know it, you have a social movement behind it, and people want action. In that social movement, they want action. They may even have the political clout to make action happen, or to make something happen, which may or may not be positive. As we have looked at the history of viruses, these things tend to grow. AIDS started in 1920, latest, it took a long time before AIDS was an epidemic. Right. Ebola may or may not be a comparable epidemic today. It might be, we've known about Ebola for about 30 years. Mm-hmm. It may be another 40 or 50 years before Ebola, as an epidemic, rises to the level that AIDS is today and the number of people that it kills and can have an impact on. It might happen faster. That's all about vectors, and we'll see it when we see it. But the point is, that Twitter has, and the news which will follow Twitter has the ability to amplify that talk and that message. And that's where people following Twitter, looking to Twitter for news, looking to Facebook for news, sharing the articles that are, being espoused by news companies that, benefit from fear mongering, can check themselves and rein in the reality gap and say, is this practical? Is this not? Yes, we're going to be scared because the numbers will rise. More people are going to die from Ebola in Africa. More of those cases are going to end up on the shores in the United States. And as those numbers increase, it will be a little scary. So we have to prepare ourselves for that because we are going to see something like that on Twitter. It may be, scary might be 5 people in the U.S., scary might be 10 people in the U.S., scary might be 100, whatever that number is, I don't know. It might be much higher, might be much lower, but it's still going to be a little scary because it's, however many it is, it's still too close to home. Well, but we can rein in our, our desires to try and fix things because we're scared. I've seen a lot of conversations where we need to lock down the border with Mexico so that people with Ebola don't come up from Mexico. That's just taking one other cause and pushing it through this lens, talking about Ebola. It's not practical. It may or may not be necessary from a political perspective or a logistical perspective, and it may or may not be doable, but it doesn't have a whole lot to do with Ebola today or any other thing that might come along to replace Ebola next week.
Well, when you're saying there is an impact, you're talking about, as you were describing, you're talking about Ebola as something that would follow other trajectories of a virus. Well, it also can be that we find out that actual practical fighting it could cause a different outcome too. And while it's not
or anything, yes.
Right. I think bird flu wasn't cured by us knowing about it and overreacting to it. The bird flu, and I'm trying to make it as generic as possible and not talk about the A1, all those
strain,
the strains and whether there was ever anything to in it. I frankly at this point don't care. But a lot of I've seen a lot saying that was overblown and people benefited from it being overblown. But the point is that we really don't know how much of that was because of that we shut the thing down more or whatever. So there is some practical use to it. There is an effect as we get all up in arms and care about this. And for that matter, the Dallas case triggering the people in the U.S. paying attention, triggering us doing the show for that matter, is inevitable. The first I heard about the Dallas thing was somebody saying Ebola case, it was Peter Shankman, said Ebola case reported in Dallas, watch what's going to happen now. He didn't say fear-mongering, I don't remember what words he used, but he said, pretty much predicted what's happening, which wasn't wasn't too hard to predict. And we've talked about celebrities blow up a lot faster and a lot bigger now because of that, good or bad or whatever it is, that effect happens. One things to watch for is when people start throwing in other issues, when you see the news media report on a tweet as if it's real news, and those kind of problems, and have some common sense about it. And I think the world's a better place because of it. I think we do jump on something, and where it needs to be done gets done. I think the cranks is what I'm now calling them. They're not trolls, because a troll is out to attack you. The cranks that decide they're going to set me straight on Twitter. They haven't bothered to read that I have been posting regularly and reading about this for months. That I was involved in writing a book last year that was about the kind of people that are being affected by Ebola and the seriousness of all that. We ought to be doing something about them getting food and water every day, having better nutrition, and some of the root causes of why it hit there instead of someplace else could be addressed. But I know better than to say, well, if we did blah blah blah, this would have never happened, because that's stepping over the line and making that kind of assumption. You can't. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from being involved with the fight of poverty and whatnot is that, we can't say that you take X number of dollars from the NASA program or from the school lunch program or from, or from, I'm trying to think of something else that's the AIDS program and spend it instead of, and spend it instead on getting food, water, and electricity to all the world. It doesn't go that way. I can't go to a spreadsheet, take money out of this account, put it over in this account, and it's going to fix things. These are complex issues, and what we did learn was going to the source, helping a community that is clearly economically worse off than us, and doing it in ways other than saying they need our help. Let's dictate it, whether that's money, time, sending them new shoes, whatever it is. We don't decide. We go to them and we help them have a better life themselves. And in some of those cases, like for instance, somebody's living on $2 a day. Some of the people are very happy. Transferring that back to Ebola, somebody that's got Ebola, I don't think you're going to find a case where say, please leave us alone. Well, we want Ebola and we think it'll work for us. That's not going to happen. But we do have people that are afraid of it, that won't let the aid workers in, and are taking actions because of that actually makes things worse instead of better. And so we know the right answer is to teach people the right kind of things and be as objective as possible. Nobody's objective. I can try. And then, with those facts, try to help somebody who wants to do good instead of, going to push a button and then it's fixed.
The approach you're talking about, and I would agree with it. I see it personified in what the Gates Foundation is doing. The approach they're taking, they don't always hit home runs and things like that, but they're looking to apply the accelerator, to apply money and juice to the areas where they've found that it will be more likely to be effective, rather than throwing money at problems, not knowing if it actually works. They're testing things before they apply.
Right.
Now, one of the stories that's out there, and it's a pretty good story. Many people have already heard it, but it was on NPR and a couple other places. But Firestone has a rubber plant in Africa, and they're right in the hot zone for Ebola. A couple of the people that live on this plantation, I think it's got about 15,000 people, came down with Ebola, and it was encroaching in on them. They basically had a team at this plantation, Firestone workers, did some research over the weekend. How do we contain Ebola? How do we set up a quarantine zone? They used some materials that they had at the local Firestone plant there, where they're collecting rubber and processing it, and they set up their own quarantine. They quarantined the folks. The local villages surrounding the area started sending their own Ebola people to the fire plantation, and because they had the means and the quick knowledge just from reviewing some of the things on the CDC website and things like that, how to deal with Ebola, and they were able to contain and did a very good job of it in that particular area. Nice practical approach. Go do some research, figure out how to deal with it, and deal with it. Very American thing to do, I would say, even though this is in Africa. Figure it out and deal with it. And that's kind of the whole gist of this. It's not so much don't panic or worry or hold out the guns at the plantation and keep people away. No, you can't come in. That type of thing. It's let's just deal with it and move forward.
Right. Well, we're going to have to deal with it for sure. That's that's a given. There's no way to say the rest of the world can get Ebola and we're going to put up our borders and be safe. Watch any zombie movie. It doesn't work. But what Gates Foundation is doing is what the scientific method is what what we call American ingenuity. However you want to do it is getting at somebody, a human being has a problem, and helping that person with that. We don't need to get into a discussion over the techniques that the Firestone plant used. I mean, could we do that? Could we learn from them? Yeah, we could study from that and maybe pick up something. But we don't need to have Congress pass a law saying that will be the way any American company must act in these situations. You can't centralize plan that. And like you said, Gates is doing some stuff that in testing brings up, well, wait a minute, how does the Gates Foundation know what's best? He thinks because he's got all that money he can? No, He's out testing, and he's going to make some mistakes. And well, I'm mad that I was involved on the program with a mistake. Sorry, that's life, you know. Like you're going out and you're trying and you're testing, and what a great approach to take. And what I was saying before about the money, you know, imagine, you know, I've had this discussion with people, you know, but you know, we take, okay, Gates has X number of dollars. Let's divide that up by the population. Everybody gets a check for $10, and we have distributed his wealth, and it's got to be better than putting it all with one person. The fallacy in that is that it isn't. It doesn't work that way. And Gates could just do some things that we don't agree with. But, you know, that we can't, like, make this knee-jerk reaction to, well, here's $100 billion, here's how it should be invested. Because, unfortunately, everything I've seen is unintended consequences, centralized planning, pushing it out to other people have problems. And you know what? One of the things to try is centralized planning and telling everybody what to do. Go ahead, try. I mean, I try never to oppose a thought, an idea of what somebody may want to do. The guy that wants to go on his compound and wait it out, if he can do that, you know, more power to him. I would have a discussion with him. How much does he care about his fellow man? But, you know, again, that would be a generalized discussion on that. It's not that he owes us because he's got a ranch and money and supplies that he owes taking care of us. I think that, you know, my personal reaction would be, how can I help my neighbors? But again, I let him try his way. And
you bring up a good point with there's a lot of potential for unintended consequences, human error, and people just being humans in general. And this is something we're going to see stories. And I say this from the perspective of, because we're going to see them doesn't mean we should lose our minds when we see them. But we're going to see stories where people have made mistakes, because people do. And we have to build that into the protocols, you know, the way that we respond to it and how we amend those protocols and make them better to deal with the mistakes that pop up. But just because somebody makes a mistake doesn't mean we should torch them and their organization and everything else. And we're also going to see people that subvert the protocols. Because due to human nature, and they're seeing this in Africa already, this has been one of the larger problems with this particular outbreak, people don't like to be quarantined. The initial symptoms are very like the flu or just your common cold, and they say, I don't have Ebola, I just have a cold. Why should I have to not go to work? Why should I have to stay home, isolate myself for 3 weeks? They don't fully believe it, and that's a natural human reaction to such a thing, denial. And that feeds itself into the anti-fear group as well. You know, I'm not scared of Ebola, but the issue is that we're going to need to be prepared. And wherever this starts to break out in, you know, if it expands to other countries, you know, wherever it might go, people are going to have to be you know, prepare themselves mentally for the fact that we might have to change the way we do things. Consider, you know, there's a handful of people in Dallas that have had to lock themselves up for 3 weeks, and that's going to take, you know, that's going to get people, that's going to kind of hit you in the gut. Well, I don't want the government to lock me up for 3 weeks. You know, they can't do this to me. They can't take, you know, there's going to be a lot of reactionary people out there that are not going to be happy with some of the things that are going to need to be done, whether it's coming from a central organizer or whether it's, you know, region by region, state by state approaches. But human,
or even if it
individuals, they're going to take some actions to subvert. Some people are going to go hide themselves on a ranch because they don't want to be quarantined, and they're going to take their family with them and infect the family, and that's going to be the news.
If the guy on a ranch has a teenager, I'm sure he's already encountered this of, no, I want to go to the mall, Dad. You know, so. The
teenager's going to sneak out. This happened. There's a group of doctors in Africa a couple days ago. They're on quarantine. They don't think they have it, but they were supposed to be in quarantine for 21 days. These are doctors, professionals that have been working in the hot zone in Africa. And a few of them decided that they didn't want to stay in quarantine. They broke quarantine, and they had to start the quarantine process all over again, another 3 weeks from the day they broke quarantine. Human nature, for whatever reason, a perceived emergency,
right.
You know, and got to get this report in, or, you know, lose the job or money or whatever the case may be.
That is definitely an area, as we get talking about it, we try to, you know, guess at what might happen with other people. We know we can't. We know there's real problems there. We know there's not a blanket cure for this, and I'm not talking about Ebola, because I could easily say, no, I don't think Ebola is going to grow as big as you do, but that doesn't matter because something else could. The zombies could finally attack, whatever, or just stupidity could attack. I think it already has, but dealing with it that's life. That's what we do. We figure out how to do these things, and I'll say that I want to close off with saying I have great hope that humanity is in a better state than it was, and what I've seen in my lifetime is that the chances of getting rid of a disease, of making it not become the next plague, is better, just from a health standpoint, and then just things in general. That the good of people comes out despite all of this rhetoric where we're talking about whether or not we ought to, shoot people or close a border or what to do with the ashes when we burn something. All those discussions are at least being had by people who have the base intelligence to say something. Yesterday I saw that the governor of New Orleans was called a fool for questioning whether or not the ashes from burning up Ebola waste had posed any threat. I side with the scientists as being right. I don't side with the scientist who's saying that the governor of Louisiana is an idiot for suggesting it. He was acting under the knowledge he had, and at least he was trying to say something. I don't think it was a political statement to try to get ground with the anti-Ebola voters in his state. We get very cynical, and I'd like to leave that cynicism for a moment and say I think we're doing better, and information is going to triumph as we feel that we're connected. We're going to have less outbreaks of fear Ebola, saying all I can do is be anti-Ebola and in every way make up some. I think that's going away. I think we're actually getting more educated as a society.
I think so as well, and that's probably a good place to wrap up. This has been our 38th show. We were on a little bit of a hiatus for a week or so, and we're now back on schedule. You can check us out at youtube.com/ZetaMining, or catch us at ZetaMining.com as well on iTunes. That's the Zeta Mining Show. Warren Whitlock's at Warren Whitlock, and I'm at Brett Bum on Twitter. Check us out. Let us know if you'd like to join us for a show or talk about a topic in the future, and we appreciate
and be sure to tune in next week when we promise to be Ebola free.
Right. Promise to be Ebola free. All right. Thanks, everybody.